of the consequences is that your skin starts to rot off and your, open sores just form on your body and ultimately leads to amputation in some cases. So, I'm seeing a lot of this now on the streets, and I talk to several addicts who say they're scared of this stuff, but the addiction is so bad, they're still willing to take their chances.
The following segment is presented in partnership with Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Our friend Jonathan Choe over at Discovery Institute has given us a little sneak peek at a story he's dropping. He might have just dropped it or he's about to drop it today. He's been doing some awesome reporting on the homelessness crisis, the drug crisis, the crime crisis, and all of that. And he spent some time in downtown Seattle over the weekend because coming up at 1 p.m. today, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell is outlining his plan to revitalize downtown and address public safety and health issues. So ahead of that, Jonathan Choe thought, hey, well, why don't I go downtown and see kind of the state of things this weekend ahead of the mayor's announcement, and then, see what the mayor wants to do. So I will warn you, we're going to play this whole story from Jonathan. I'm going to warn you, it's hard to watch. There are some images of people really in the depths of addiction and despair. And so, view it accordingly. But I just thought there's such an important, it's such an important thing for everyone to see to understand the true extent of things. So here's a story from Jonathan Choe.
Even in the pouring rain, the addiction is fierce.
What is that?
It's called pixie dust.
Drug users congregate under umbrellas near bus stops and vestibules, or simply get high out in the open in front of shocked parents and children.
But if anything, it's teaching her not to do drugs. I never will.
Good for you.
Look at this man overdosing near the Raw store.
Was he doing blues?
I don't know what is it.
Police rushed in to save his life with several hits of Narcan as people watched in horror.
Are you just used to this?
I've been here for a long ass time, so yeah.
This all happened over the weekend in downtown Seattle.
All of that in front of people, it's bad.
With most of the action concentrated on 3rd Ave and Pike Street.
Whatever the city decides to do is not going to stop.
My ejected you are my ejected.
Right in the middle of this tourist gateway.
They check the purity of it and tell you what's in there.
The drug of choice remains fentanyl, also known on the street as fetty or blues. These tiny pills being smoked on sheets of foil now go for as little as $2 a pop.
All of us have Narcan.
Health officials say it's the primary driver behind King County's record drug overdose deaths last year.
So you're trying to make sure that your fentanyl doesn't have the tranq in it, is that right?
Yeah.
Making matters worse, tranq is in the region.
Aren't you concerned about getting the tranq, Fetty, in your batch?
I've already had it.
The DEA recently issued a public safety warning saying illicit drugs laced with the animal tranquilizer xylazine causes flesh-rotting sores on users, often leading to amputations.
The Fetty could be laced with tranq. That's the problem.
That xylazine is tranq.
You know it's in there, but you're still doing it?
I'm addicted to it.
While the situation is dire, some say this is actually progress, and Seattle is headed in the right direction because it used to be far worse.
The mayor is cleaning up the city.
Just right now, let's go find somewhere else to hang out.
More officers are now patrolling the area and intentionally pushing the illicit activity off the sidewalks.
No drugs out here, buddy.
Drug dealers and people selling stolen merchandise are being arrested.
They're cracking down hard.
And some of the businesses that closed down last year because of the crime and open-air drug use have decided to come back.
Still a lot more to go, though.
So on my walk along 3rd Avenue last week, I actually saw people using fentanyl.
On Monday afternoon, Mayor Bruce Harrell is expected to tout some of these accomplishments under his watch and finally unveil more details about the much-anticipated downtown activation plan and issue an executive order to address the fentanyl crisis. But even with these hopeful signs and possibly a change in culture, the addicts say they're simply moving to other nearby streets and into alleyways. And it's unclear how many of these men and women are actually getting into treatment.
What do you think about this open-air drug use?
Seattle.
It's Seattle?
Walk over a few blocks near City Hall. The tents have returned to Cherry Street and many office buildings remain vacant. If the focus is truly on reclaiming and revitalizing greater downtown, 12th and Jackson in the Chinatown International District also faces the same challenges.
Mad people overdosing, man.
Many in the city are tired of temporary fixes and now hoping and waiting for lasting solutions.
Jonathan Choe, welcome to Undivided. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Brandi, thanks again for having me.
So let's get to you're going to City Hall for a press conference that Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell is having at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
And he is going to discuss a plan to try to deal with the drug crisis downtown. So lay out what you're expecting to hear from the mayor today.
Yeah, this is a long-awaited kind of preview of his downtown activation plan. And also the mayor is going to issue an executive order to deal with the fentanyl and drug crisis that is just ravaging this city. Look, this past weekend, as the piece you just watched, this Saturday and Sunday, I intentionally wanted to go out there and say, look, here's what's happening right now, real time. Unfortunately, the drug use is still happening. The black markets where, addicts are, selling stolen goods still happening. The tourists, the children, the parents walking through these drug dens, unfortunately, it's still there. However, depending who you ask and the time of day, it's actually gotten better. You have more of a police presence there. You have officers actually walking this beat now, pushing these addicts off the streets. It looks cleaner. However, the addicts are going into the side streets, the alleyways. And another really devastating combination on the streets right now is fentanyl and xylazine, now called the tranq fentanyl. So I've been seeing some of that in downtown Seattle. So anyway, long story short, the mayor has his hands full.
Really quickly on the tranq stuff, and we just watched your piece. There's no reversal drug for it, right? There's nothing comparable to Narcan for it.
Yeah, Narcan doesn't work. And one of the other consequences for this is that if you ingest this stuff, again, the xylazine is an animal tranquilizer. So one of the consequences is that your skin starts to rot off and your, open sores just form on your body and ultimately leads to amputation in some cases. So, I'm seeing a lot of this now on the streets, and I talked to several addicts who say they're scared of this stuff, but the addiction is so bad, they're still willing to take their chances.
Oh, well, and Nicole and I were talking on the show the other day, King County released overdose numbers by month for 2023 so far, and it's like 600 a month. And a lot of them are being saved by Narcan. But if you've got a drug that has no emergency miracle treatment like that, and we get into the point where we have 600 overdose deaths per month, I mean, I hope we don't get to that point, but I wonder what that would do for sort of the sense of urgency. So when it comes to the mayor's announcement, I mean, how much do you think he's going to be willing to, you got the carrot and the stick, to push the stick approach in trying to really use law enforcement to improve the state of downtown?
I think he's going to say that's part of the strategy. It's having a police presence and enforcing the law actually, and then prosecuting. That's a non-negotiable now. The mayor is going to have that in his strategy. The business community is demanding it. I think we're also going to see another approach to actually getting some of these addicts help. I know right now there's this, harm reduction strategy, and depending on which camp you're in, harm reduction basically tries to keep the addict alive as long as possible. But on the flip side of that, the criticism is that all these needles and meth pipes and all these supplies are being given out, no questions asked, without any requirement for treatment. So I know recently Councilmember Sarah Nelson has come out publicly to say, look, there has to be more than just harm reduction. There has to be some type of intervention where we get these addicts help and into treatment centers. So it's going to be really interesting to see, again, what the mayor lays out. But this is going to be the plan moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm happy that he is prioritizing it. I'm happy he's at least acknowledging that, hey, we have to do something, because I think there's a lot of politicians in Seattle who still have their heads in the sand on just how bad things have become. So just the fact he's willing to at least discuss it in an honest way, I do appreciate. Let me just ask you before we let you go, Jonathan, and I know we'll have you on many times between now and the city council elections in November, at least I hope so. We were just talking about, and we're going to talk on the podcast more about Chicago and what's happening there. And they got rid of Lori Lightfoot, and then they doubled down with this guy who supports many of the same policies and even wants to take them further on sort of the soft on crime approach. So I guess based on everything you cover and what you see, how ready do you think Seattleites are this year to make an overhaul at City Hall? Or are you worried that we're going to have a Chicago situation and they'll just double down on the same old stuff?
Yeah, look, I think that's the biggest concern right now. A lot of the reasonable people in Seattle do not want the activist class of council members to emerge, at least the far left activist class that is, for defunding the police, that is, for allowing the encampments to stay in place. So I believe deep down that we are going to see a change. I think Mayor Harrell, again, seen as a moderate, he's got a big challenge ahead of him, but I think he's really going to look for council members, and he's going to push for council members who align with his vision and strategy. Because quite frankly, as you know how the council works, at the end of the day, the mayor may want to do something, but if the council doesn't back him, it'll totally undercut his plan and strategy.
Yeah, I think that's what happened with Jenny Durkin, too. She was pretty moderate by Seattle standards, but the council and her were just butting heads consistently. So, Jonathan Choe, where can people follow you and watch your stuff?
Yeah, look, I'm still a senior fellow at Discovery Institute. Proud of that. Fixhomelessness.org, and of course, on my social media platforms like Twitter at Choe, CHOESHOW.
The previous segment was brought to you in partnership with Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org.